first person is
Finally meet you in person.
Dylan Sarah Boma.
Yeah, I'm just gonna be up here, and after my poetry, I'll go down there.
Okay, great.
I'll just start it at 4 o'clock.
Oh yeah, they have.
Okay, sounds fine.
So that we can get
I
all the
would just
songs
do
and
it this way. Okay. Yep, just start it and then just start it and then leave it.
I'll just do it right now.
Thank you for being here to celebrate the life of Kyle Forti. My name is Lawrence Shirley. I'm a friend of Hope, and I've been helping coordinate some of the logistics for the program this afternoon. A few announcements before we get started. If you need restrooms, they're out this way. It's down the hall to the left. We also have a space for children to play if they would like to do so under the supervision of 3 preschool teachers. That's down the hall to the right. We ask that you please pick your children up immediately after the service. We also have a gift for you for coming today. We have a book that would have been one that Kyle enjoyed with a sticker in honor of the event today. So please pick up one of those as you are leaving, one per family, please. Thank you so much for being here. I'd like to invite Father Anthony to begin the service.
If you'll pray with me, we'll ask the Holy Spirit to be with us this afternoon. O Heavenly King, the Comforter, the Spirit of truth, who art everywhere present and fillest all things, treasury of blessings, giver of life, come and abide in us, cleanse us from every impurity, and save our souls, O Good One. It's my job to welcome you all this afternoon, to thank you on behalf of Hope and their entire family for being here, and in so being here, expressing your love and support for all of them. Prayers have been offered, tears are shed. Yesterday at the church, we paid our last respects, said our goodbye to Kyle in the flesh as we laid him to rest there in Manitou Springs. This afternoon is our opportunity to reflect on his life, reflecting on his life to reflect on our life through the witness of Kyle's life. Undoubtedly, you'll hear numerous times this afternoon how Kyle loved his wife and his children, how he brought contagious joy and enthusiasm to all those around him, how he labored to do good, to bring about good in this world, in this community, to children on whose behalf Kyle and Hope labored tirelessly, how Kyle supported others in striving also to bring about good in this world. You'll hear all of those things. And it is hopeful that in hearing about Kyle's life, you will also be able to then reflect on your own lives, our own lives. Do I love my wife and children as Kyle witnessed? Am I bringing joy, light, and life to those around me as he did? Am I striving to bring about good in this world? What am I doing to bring about good in my community? To bring about good to those who desperately long for a taste of that goodness which comes from God. This afternoon we'll reflect on Kyle's life. And I would put forward to you that his legacy, his memory that will be evident this afternoon, will have little to nothing to do with the bills that he was part of passing, will have little to do with the candidates that he helped get elected, will have little to nothing to do with how he traveled to exciting places here or there, because you see, all of those things will pass away. All of those things, in the end, are simply dust and ashes. His legacy, his memory will be lasting if his life makes a difference in my life, in your life. If the witness of his life causes you to do likewise, to love your family, to give joy to those around you, to serve those in need that you come across and encounter in this life. This will be the ultimate honor of Kyle's memory, to allow his life to touch your life and be a witness unto good, unto God.
We're going to be singing one of Hope's favorite Orthodox hymns from the Vespers service called "O Gladsome Light." And it refers to the setting of the sun, in which Christ is praised as the light which illumines man's darkness, who is the light of the world and of the kingdom of God, which shall have no evening.
My name's Sarah Boma, and I was a friend of Kyle's and an employee for a time. I'll be reading one of his favorite poems, "Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night" by Dylan Thomas. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words has forked no lightning they, do not go gentle into that good night. And you, my Father, there on that sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light.
I'm Hope's sister Joy, and this is a passage that Kyle underlined in Mary Oliver's Upstream. Now in the spring I kneel. I put my face into the packets of violets, the dampness, the freshness, the sense of everness. Something is wrong, I know it, if I do not keep my attention on eternity. May I be the tiniest nail in the house of the universe, tiny but useful. May I stand forever in the stream. May I look down upon the windflower and the bowl thistle and the coreopsis with the greatest respect. Teach the children. We don't matter so much, but the children do. Show them the daisies and the pale hepatica. Teach them the taste of sassafras and wintergreen, the lives of the blue sailors, mallow, sunburst, the moccasin flowers, and the frisky ones, inkberry, lamb's quarters, blueberries, and the aromatic ones, rosemary, oregano. Give them peppermint to put in their pockets as they go to school. Give them the fields and the woods and the possibility of the world salvaged from the lords of profit. Stand them in the stream, head them upstream. Rejoice as they learn to love this green space they live in, its sticks and leaves, and then the silent, beautiful blossoms. Attention is the beginning of devotion.
I can't believe we're here, but I'm not going to talk about that too much. Can you all hear me all right? Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you, especially to my friend Lauren. I was looking through pictures from our wedding, which was kind of in Indiana and kind of in Carmel, California. And in the Carmel portion at the reception, I have a picture of Kyle and I kissing, obviously, all the time. And in the background, there's Lauren in her dress and heels carrying a crate of glasses to the reception. And that's basically what she's done for me this week, too. And so many of others of you with Simon, Kyle's godfather from the Orthodox Church, making sure we could have this simulcasted so that his grandmother, who couldn't come from Wisconsin, could watch live. And so many others, too. And I just wanted to say thank you to every single person who's helped me organize this and who's dropped off food and sent notes and cards and just the hundreds of things I have yet to read and go through, because I'm really into thank you notes. I love doing them. It might be a while, honestly, before I work through this list. And until then, just know that we feel the love and we feel the support, and I think that's a reflection of the love Kyle gave out that is coming back to us now. And that I've always said in my Foster Together work that the real poverty that children have is not just financial, but it's a poverty of love, and to put it kind of utilitarian speaking, a lack of social capital. And I've said, like, Max is going to be fine. He has so many people around him, and I long for the day when every child who faces a tragedy gets that kind of love. I also want to take a moment to say that this is both my mother and Kyle's mother's birthday. And I put in the long version of the obituary, which did not get in the paper because that was expensive, that Kyle and I were recently often talking about how he was formed by 3 women, especially in his early years, in the time between having a dad, not having a dad, and then having a dad again when Scott came into his life. And that's his Aunt Lisa, his Grandma Mary, and his mother Anne. And he honored and respected and loved women so much, I think, and he thinks, because of that time. And I wore today, I don't know if you can see, his favorite T-shirt. This artist is Jean-Michel Basquiat, and he actually died also at age 27, so a couple of years short of Kyle. But Kyle loved his art. It was, kind of social art and very, very against the status quo and for the people. And I was reading through Kyle's journal, which Kyle began in August, and wrote for me, which I consider for me now, 5 pages between now and August and now, which shows how overcommitted in the best of ways Kyle was. I had a bunch of Christmas cards that he meant to send out that were in his desk that I found a few days ago, so a few lucky people got those. They were addressed, they were sealed, there was just not a stamp. I don't know what his thing was with it. I would ask him, hey, honey, you want me to put stamps on these? He's like, no, I'm just stressed out, I just need some time right now, I can get to the stamps later. Okay. But with Basquiat, he had written one line in here about mothers. And I want to find it for you. I have here it is. I have all of these Post-it notes. I've been just poring over this journal. He said, Basquiat said his mother taught him all primary things. All his art was from her. And I know that is how Kyle felt about his mom. He would often say that other than me, she was his closest, dearest friend, and they talked all the time, and I know that's a blessing to both of us now, because now I have a portion of Kyle and his mother. And we've only grown closer through through the last 12 years of knowing each other, Anne and I have, and I know that's going to continue. So I have a long reflection about Kyle to share with you in a moment, but don't worry, it's not that long. But first I wanted to read you a couple of quotes to let you into his beautiful mind that I was so privileged to know and to study. I loved studying him and truly taking in every bit of his person that I could. And so that's what I've been doing with these 4 or 5 pages he gave me from this journal. And I've turned it into my journal now. But we were at my brother's wedding in Charlotte, and in August, the day he started this journal on August 19th. And we, as you know, we really believe in the power of grandparents. We won the grandparent lottery on both sides. And so we would send, when we really needed to get work done, since we didn't have daycare or anything, we would send Max for a week to 10 days at a time. I know, it's wild, but you should really try it. To one grandparent or the other, alternating months. And we would just work, pound out work those weeks. And so after my brother's wedding, Max was going to fly back to California with my parents, and we'd go and pick him up after that. But he wrote in here, and I love this. I consider this a tribute to myself. It says, Max was broken up about leaving for California with the Nowaks. He knew he was going to have a fun time, but he didn't want to miss us. Kyle wrote, hope has taught him that the greatest good is to be together at all times, the 3 of us. And I feel like I reformed Kyle a little bit from this. He could have turned into this total workaholic, but he often told me, like, the reason I want to be a family man is because, like, home life with you guys is so good. And so I do consider that a tribute to me. Another thing he wrote, as you know, Kyle and I talked a lot about justice and injustice and honestly, the unfair advantage that we are often given because Kyle and I were given because we had solid parents, and we had, honestly, solid parents, full stop. I often say when people come to me and they feel guilty about not being foster parents, I say, are you loving your kids? Do they wake up every morning and know that their tummy's going to get filled up and you're going to give them as many hugs as they need? Then you're doing amazing work for this world. I also ask them to become foster parents if they're that good, but, you know, I'm not really into shaming people either. So as you know, we talked a lot about how to spend our privilege that we've been given as people who have great parents. And he was writing, I don't know if you remember, he wrote something very controversial on Facebook about, I think it's George Steiny, and he was electrocuted and sitting on a Bible, and in this film, at least, that was made about him. And Kyle was just broken up about this story. And he said, we humans, depending on our circumstances, are either fighting our oppression or should be using our privilege to make things, not to make things equal per se, but to make things at least more right. Is it possible to live morally or justly without doing one or the other? I'm not sure. But George Stinney, I still don't know what to do about him. He wrote just one line, seek peace and pursue it. That's from a passage that we memorized when we were dating, which his father's going to read at the end of this service. We wanted a peaceful life, whether that meant running to Denver all the time and trying to get legislative work done, or trying to make sure we kept in touch with our kids that we sent home from foster care, or just having time alone and down together. We wanted to figure out what peace looked like for us. This was important to him, too. He writes, fundamentalism will destroy you in all forms. Nothing else is as sure a route to evil and failure. And Kyle and I often talked about how people are drawn to fundamentalism because they're drawn to absolutes. And oftentimes, life is much more gray than that. He was preparing in this journal for something I hosted called a Foster Story Slam, where we were just trying to get people to think about foster care, just get it on their radar. I'm not asking them to be foster parents, but just think about what kids experience in the system. Because we didn't think it was okay for us to go ahead and live this comfortable life and not have to know. And he said, the thing is, I see foster care in many ways for myself as a bare minimum, especially coming from a place of privilege. This isn't me just trying to be cool or be a baller, which he was often accused of doing these things as virtue signaling, or over the top. And he said in capital letters, doing something is my only option. We also talked about the economy a lot. He said, can capitalism reward something other than insatiable desire? Can markets help the most oppressed and weak people? We always have to be disciplined. Does capitalism help us do that? Before I talk a little bit about what I want you to remember about Kyle, I asked Max if he'd like to say something, and he said no, and that's fine. I will say Max's saddest thing about this right now is that he is missing the launch on the bed game of Kyle throwing him onto our large king bed over and over and over again. Daddy, let's do that again. Our former foster son, Xavier, really wanted to be here today, but unfortunately he was unable to. And he told me that he wanted to tell a story about when Kyle took him camping. He's 14 now, but he was 12 when he lived with us. And we had taken him and Max to our house, and it was clear he needed some time, like with less stimulation and less people around. And so, to my parents' house? And in California, it was his first plane flight. It was not honestly our brightest idea to put a traumatized child on a plane and think he'd have a great old time. It was a mix of fun and stress. And because he needed that separate space, Kyle said, and this is the kind of self-sacrifice Kyle would do, he wanted to relax and enjoy my family and just have family time, and he ended up taking Xavier camping in San Francisco by himself. They were sleeping in the car. They got like some kind of insulated tent, and it was Xavier just loves camping, and he felt so loved in that. He felt so paid attention to, and as my sister read, I think she said attention is the truest form of devotion or something like that, and we absolutely believe that with all of the children. I won't speak for baby Prince because his mom is here to say a few words, and she'll come up in a little bit. But what I wanted to say about the children is that I've realized in the last 2 weeks that not only is Max and this new baby Kyle's legacy on the world, but Prince and Xavier, too, hold his legacy in a different way, not in that he is their father. They have that in a different sense. But that they knew he loved them too. And so it's encouraging to me that I don't only have 2 little people to carry on his legacy, but I feel like there are 4 of them. Now, what I wanted to say specifically that I want you to remember about my husband is, as we've seen in so many stories and news articles and beautiful Facebook posts, which I'm going to treasure for my whole life, and letters that you've written me, is the indomitable side of Kyle, and the go-getter, and the powerful, and the unstoppable, charismatic, what did Sam say, zest. His dear friend Sam Stevenson couldn't be here today, but he's been a comfort to me this week in all of his memories. And that was a big side of Kyle. I want you to also know Kyle's tenderness, and to use a pop psychology word that Kyle and I often made fun of, Kyle's vulnerability. And there are funny things, like Kyle really hated his teeth. I don't know if any of you knew that. He was like getting ready to do Invisalign because he didn't like how his teeth looked. He would say like fangs. I told him it probably never cost him any contracts, but I was like, I loved your teeth, they're great. Kyle did not have his life organized in the sense of his clothes. Like, he would be getting ready to go to Denver, and he'd be like, Hope, can you help me find socks? And we could find like one dress sock and like one ankle sock. And so you might not know, but Kyle was probably sitting in meetings with you with mismatched socks. He really felt like his car should be, at the age of 29, he should have like been in charge of his life enough that his car was in order all the time. And if any of you ever rode with Kyle, unless it was like the day after he took it to Waterworks and paid $150 for the most deep clean they would do, it was an absolute disaster all the time because too busy. Just, you know, you come home from Denver, you get back up, you go back to Denver, you do meetings here, you pick up Xavier, you whatever. It was just, you know, fast food stuff, books that didn't come in, papers, clothes, just all of the things in the car. And I was with one of his mentors and the woman he wants to be like when he grows up last week, Laura Love. Laura, I hope you're okay with me saying this. She's a very real person. But she had like mud in her car from her children. She has 3 children too. And there was like mud on the floor. And I was like, I need to text a picture of this to Kyle because Laura Love has mud in her car. It's okay, like don't worry about it so much, honey. She didn't have food wrappers or anything like that, but, you know. Hi, Prince. Those are the funny parts of it, but I want you to know that Kyle struggled and had a lot of exhaustion from performing. And he struggled to find friends, I think as many men do. I feel like I have it easy as a woman. I don't know if that's true or not, but I have just dozens of friends that I could ask to comfort me at any time. And for different seasons in his life, Kyle didn't feel like he had that. That's why he relied so much on his mom, which is a saving grace and absolutely wonderful. He did have exhaustion and impatience sometimes with helping people. He constantly had to plead with me not to spend all of our family's energy externally. He had a strain to find enough new clients each month to pay his employees, to pay our bills, to fund his adventures. And he went months without pay because he so valued A, adventure, and B, keeping his people taken care of. He deeply cared about his employees and wanted them to have peace and to build their own families. And we knew that the company couldn't afford to hire a nanny, but we often tossed around the idea of trading childcare amongst ourselves and building an office with a playroom. He had a desire in the past 2 years to build a relationship with his biological father. He also regretted not doing so sooner. His father, Randy, his biological father, began sending Kyle reflections earlier in 2018 about the books he was reading in jail. And this gave Kyle a lot of joy because he wanted to connect with his dad in a way that meant something to him and to feel kinship with him because his blood came from there, but he didn't ever really have an ongoing relationship with him. I don't know if all of you know this, but he had just gone to Wisconsin to try to, hi Max, you can come up if you want to. He had gone to Wisconsin last month, well in January, to try to visit his biological father. And the paperwork didn't go through correctly because we had just moved and they had the old address, and so they wouldn't allow him to see his father. And I know that if he had any time left, he would have wanted to put that on the top of his list to reconnect before he left us. Even with this connection he felt with his biological father, with the letters, he would sometimes stop corresponding. Kyle would for weeks or months at a time because of the emotional energy required to face the facts of a broken childhood. He simply could not constantly function at 100% performance and bear his trauma top of mind all the time. I mean, I think a lot of us have to compartmentalize and do that, and Kyle was no exception. He was not superhuman in the sense that he could just keep performing and build something as intense as this relationship. As speaking of the performance, our friend Kate wrote to him, "Leave something for the rest of us tired nerds." Kyle felt lots of pressure, as I said before. He would come home and tell me that he had been performing all day, To make the sale, to assuage the client, to make a point winsomely, to bear with a challenging and beloved person. Sometimes Kyle's outward performance would bring him home depleted. I treasure my memories of holding his head in my lap and telling him to simply rest with me for the evening, just to stop for a bit. And he would. I reminded him that how many proposals he sent out that day had nothing to do with my love for him. That the only performance I'd like from him was to be allowed to fall asleep in his arms where I felt the most deeply happy, satisfied, and peaceful without fail, and that is what I'm longing for now. I also told him regularly that if it ever became too much for him, that if he was ever going to break, I would happily run away to the hills with him, build a simple house, live on a little money that we could earn, and just be in nature with our family. He knew I would take his soul wellness over any accomplishment or recognition in a heartbeat. This applies to foster care too, as most things in my life do, where he necessitated that we would take long breaks from foster care because we knew we couldn't have this performance life and do a worthy job for the children and keep up with the children that we'd already sent home. And that was a big priority for us. It's not about numbers for us. I just want you all to know the tender side of Kyle. He was not all accomplishment and steel. That was a lot of him, but he was loved beyond his doing. He is loved beyond his doing. He is loved for his being, his existence. I celebrated every breath he took, his presence beside me each morning, and we would just wake up and say, I know this sounds so cheesy, but I am unashamed to say it is true. Almost every morning we would wake up and say, I can't believe I get to do this with you again today. This is so exciting. Thank you for being with me. I used to be embarrassed about saying stuff like that because people would think I'm being like cheesy and trying to get attention. But now I can do whatever I want, right? Loving that man, being his wife, is the greatest honor I have ever had. To partner with him and raise children with him. And I can't imagine a more worthy way to spend my life. Thank you so much.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Katie. I'm Prince's mother. I was asked to speak about my journey with Kyle. You know, going through like my situation with my son the first time I met Hope. Not only that, I was a ward of the state 18 years. So when you go through it, you kind of hold feelings. But I remember the first time I met Kyle and Hope, call it icebreaker out here. I let them know, no matter what happened, I wanted them to still be a big part of my son's life. But at that time in my situation, I knew my son wasn't going to be adoptable, and they encouraged it. So for that, he immediately had my respect. My son doesn't have that father figure, so Kyle was a huge father figure. Every time he got to go play with Max, and Kyle would pick him up, he brights up. You hear him in the audience, Hope is mom. He knows me and Hope. Everyone's a little bit mom right now in this age, but I'm very grateful that Kyle and Hope was Prince's foster family and that they prolonged our relationship the first year of Prince's return with me. I don't think I could have made it without both of them. They would drop their schedules to work around my work life. They introduced me to a lot of great people to help me with my son Prince. So it's been a great journey, and now that I have all 5 of my kids, it's even a bigger blessing, and they accept all of my children whenever we're around. So for that, I'm grateful, and I know Prince is gonna forever love him, and he will know about him, and he has pictures of him. And, you know, Max and Hope is forever our family. So thank you for that.
We're tossing pennies in a well, empty pockets all turned out. Happy, shining, blessed are the ones who hunger. And when our poverty is plain, we try to burn it in our brain. Trace a line around your face to paint a picture. So further up and further in, we have nowhere else to go. We plant the seeds of toil and tears, its beauty we will sow. Oh, blessed are the ones, oh, blessed are the ones, blessed are the hungry ones. Let's build a house with turned out doors so we can share what love affords. Fill ourselves out like the wine that we've been saving. And when our well is running dry, we will raise our glasses high, and we're shining on the faces of the thirsty. So further up and further in, we have nowhere else to go. We plant the seeds of toil and tears, the beauty we have sown. Oh, blessed are the ones, oh, blessed are the ones, blessed are the thirsty ones, yeah, yeah. Love is all, yes, love is all. Love is all, yes, love is all. Love is all we need. So further up and further in, we have nowhere else to go. If what we have all we need, it's joy that we will sow. Oh, blessed are the ones, oh, blessed are the ones, blessed are the hungry ones. Yeah. And we are blessed.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Josh Forti. I am Kyle's oldest brother, and I wanted to say thank you all so much for coming. This is just incredible, and I know that if Kyle were here, this would just mean so much to him. So thank you all so very much for coming. I'm going to be reading kind of just off of my phone here because I have a lot of thoughts, and they only gave me 2 minutes, and I'm Kyle's brother. Imagine Kyle speaking for 2 minutes. All right, so we're gonna try this, like 7 to 10 in my head, so we'll try to make it like 3. As I thought about what to say here today, I really had to take a step back and really think about like who Kyle was and what he stood for. And kind of, I like what Hope said with the fact that, we all see the go-getter side of Kyle, but as his brother, I also got to see some of the compassionate side of Kyle as well. Who was Kyle? Kyle was fun and loving and gracious and kind and compassionate. Kyle was a father, an incredible father at that. He was a husband, he was a brother, he was a son, and he was a seeker of truth. Above all, he was a servant of Christ, and I know that daily he sought truth, and that played a huge role in my life and has and will continue to as well. He was the most amazing father, and he learned much of that from my mother and father here, who are just the most incredible parents, and I know he loved you both so very, very much. He was a devoted, loving, and committed husband. And as I look at the marriage that he and Hope had, I pray that someday, sometime, I can have a marriage like that as well. Hope, where is she? She's behind. Hope. Kyle loved you. Kyle loved you so much. Kyle was also a leader. He was a very good leader at that. He listened, which is what leaders do. And he always saw the other side of the argument, which is what leaders do as well. He brought people together, and it didn't matter what setting it was in. He didn't see political lines. He didn't see someone's differing beliefs and turn them away. At our house, he was the one that when Joe and Russell and I would get into fights, he was pretty much the mediator while he was at home. And even after he left, we would call him and be like, what do we do? Because he was the one that could see all sides of it. When I was like, Joe, you're just being an idiot. Kyle's like, well, you're also being an idiot. So he brought people together in that sense. He saw people. He saw humans. And he treated everyone with love. If that isn't leadership and love, I don't know what is. I tried to think of a story that could best show this at a level that we could all understand, and I think that his friend Jared summed it up perfectly. I saw a post on Facebook about this, and Jared said, in high school, he created a space for me to be myself. I sometimes felt like a misfit. Around all my secular friends, I was too conservative. Around all my conservative friends, I was too secular. Around Kyle, I could just be me. This is Kyle. This is who Kyle was. This is what the world lost. And this is what we are celebrating here today. Through all of his life, he sought one thing above all else: truth. His search for truth was endless. He was relentless, and I know that through that, Kyle found great wisdom. My last conversation with Kyle, he said, paraphrased, all I want to do in life is be a stay-at-home dad, seek truth, understand consciousness, and know God. Kyle, now you know all of that. You are in paradise, and you have every question answered. I believe that his search for truth is what allowed Kyle to touch so many people's lives. The legacy that Kyle leaves behind is second to none. I mean, look at this crowd. Look at the lives of the people that he touched. Look at his work. Kyle was what was good in the world, and even though he has gone on, that good will live on. Kyle and I did not speak often of death because we had many plans to live a long life together. But I remember when we did talk about it, the conversation was always the same. He would say something to the effects of, my funeral should be a party. We should be celebrating my life. I'm not going to live a boring life. It will be full and a life worth celebrating. I think we can all agree that Kyle packed more into 29 years than most people do in a lifetime. So with that said, let's celebrate Kyle today. Celebrate his life. For today is not a day of sadness. It is a day of celebration. And speaking of that, it is both, as Hope said, my mom and Hope's mom's birthday today. So make sure to wish them a happy birthday. Mom, I love you. Here's to Kyle, the most loving, caring, an incredible man, brother, and husband one could ask for. I love you, bro. We'll see you soon.
Good afternoon. I am Joe Forti, Kyle's second younger brother. And today I will be sharing a short story that I have of Kyle and then some thoughts. My first time out in Colorado was to go to Summit Ministries up in Manitou for 2 weeks. So naturally, I flew out a couple days early to hang out with Kyle and Hope. The first morning I was there, Kyle had already left, but being the wonderful sister-in-law that Hope is, she made me breakfast. And she poured me a nice, tall glass of orange juice. And it tasted a little funny, but for reasons I'm still not sure about, maybe it's because she was pregnant with my nephew, or maybe I was just scared of her because that was me at 16. I dutifully drank that glass of orange juice. And then she poured me another one, and I drank that one too. A short while later, Kyle got home, and he opens the fridge, and I'm not sure if he was specifically looking for orange juice, but he pulled the orange juice out of the fridge and said, who drank the orange juice? And I said, well, I did. Hope gave it to me. I thought it tasted a little weird, though. And a look of horror came over Kyle's face, and he's like, are you okay? Do you feel fine? I said, yeah, why? He said, that wasn't orange juice. That was orange juice and vodka. That was the day I found out I had a pretty high alcohol tolerance. Yeah, it's pretty funny. It's been a surreal, difficult couple of weeks. But honestly, I have never felt so loved in my life, and that's mostly thanks to all of you. The outpouring of love and the acts of kindness and the memories that you have shared really shows the impact Kyle had on all of your lives and the man he was. Kyle's memory visits me often. Most of the time, it is a gentle reminder of the love for humanity and the togetherness that we all should have. The love that God gave Kyle is something that all of us should strive for. So when we remember Kyle, let's all be a little more loving, a little more willing to converse, and a little more willing to love humanity. Because that's what Kyle was. He had that hope, and that's what he gave all of us, is that love and hope.
All right, I am Russell Forti. I was going to say a story just like my brother Joe's, but it's not as funny, so I think I'm going to tell a different one. Anyway, I worked for Kyle. I lived with him about 6 months last summer. I had a really bad shoulder injury, and he let me come work for him. We live in Indiana. He let me come work for him. He paid for my housing. He paid for a lot of things, and just the one thing that I want everyone to remember about Kyle is that he always put his whole entire family first, and whether it be and just in the smallest ways too. Like when I lived with him, if he was getting his clothes dry cleaned, he would ask if I wanted my clothes dry cleaned, and he'd pay for it. Or anytime I picked him up food, he would say, "Buy food for yourself." Just always the tiniest little things. And the story I'll tell is I'll never forget this, and it just shows how much of a family man Kyle was. It was the last day I ever saw him, too. He was probably the most frustrated I'd ever seen him in his life. He had just had a horrible day with his business. A lot of things were going wrong. he was in the middle, he was getting, I'm not being sarcastic, he was probably getting 50, 60, 70 texts every 5 minutes. He was yelling, he was super frustrated. And then Max walked in. Max had been gone all day. And again, this is the most frustrated I've ever seen Kyle act. And Max walked in and said, "Papa, can we go on a bike ride?" And Kyle looked at him, just shut his computer, put down his phone, which he rarely does, and just walked out and just went on a bike ride with Max. So that's the last time I ever saw Kyle, and that would just always be in my mind. The most encouraging thing is just that, as 2 Timothy 4:7 says, "I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, and I have kept the faith." And that just encourages me because Kyle did that. He ran the race, and he ran it well, and he won, and that's all that matters. So he always followed what God told him to do, and I just hope that someday I can love my family and care about people in the way Kyle did.
Hi, I'm Rebecca, Kyle's little sister, and I am just so encouraged to see all of you here today celebrating our love for Kyle. There are so many funny and wonderful stories I have of Kyle. My favorite thing was probably just the fact that when he would laugh, like I like laughing a lot, and whenever Kyle would laugh or he would tell a story, and he'd use his hands all the time, and he would narrate as one person in a different way and then use his voice for something else, and he would just make me laugh so much. And the way he would talk with Russell or my brothers and sisters, it was just so fun, always so fun. Most recently, Kyle took Promise and I skiing for the first time over Thanksgiving, and then him and I and Max conquered traveling to China, which was easily by far the most incredible trip of my life. He really outdid himself with that trip. And then the last time I saw him, he came and visited me at college. And he gave me a hug and he said, "Oh, I'm sure I'll see you soon in a couple of months and we can catch up." He was truly wonderful, and I know that we can all agree that he was no ordinary man. So far, one of my favorite ways that people have described him is as a masterpiece, and I could not agree more with that. As my sister Kristen had said to me, she said, he truly brought magic wherever he went. His smile, his laugh, his soul that deeply respected and loved those around him. I have yet to meet someone who loved life as much as Kyle. And even throughout his busy life, as Hope said, he was always so intentional with the people around him and being involved in our lives and, taking me to China and skiing and visiting me at school. And my sisters and I would often have so many deep conversations with him about life and about culture and God and politics and education. He was always very open-minded, which is something that I have taken away from being with him. I cannot count the times that Kristen and I would walk into our bedroom together and we would just say, "Oh my gosh, I just want to be like Kyle," or "He's literally the coolest person I know," or "He's just the greatest person on this planet." Like he would post something on Instagram, or we would just get a birthday call from him, and we're just like, "Oh my gosh, Kyle's just so cool." And so we would often, after saying those things, we would talk about all he inspires us to do and how he would actually inspire us to chase our dreams and conquer them and to gain as much knowledge as possible and to not be afraid of searching for answers and looking for truth and with the Lord. I truly believe that so much of who I am today and how I interact with people and just what I know is because of watching Kyle's impeccable example. It was wonderful. He is honestly the greatest example of a man that I will probably ever know. The way he was a son, a big brother, a friend, a husband, and a father. And in talking with Hope and even just witnessing it in their marriage, it is something that I will deeply admire for the rest of my life. How I watched him all over the place interact with strangers who would suddenly become friends. I remember on the plane to China, China. He met this guy, and he's like a big art person in China, and by the end of the 16-hour flight, he had like gotten his phone number and his business card and was already invited to an art show in China somewhere. And we didn't end up going, but he was like, yeah, just talking to me about him all the whole ride, and that was who Kyle was. It really was. And so now when I go out and see people, even if they're a stranger, I just ask them who they are and what they do, and just, he was so genuine. And after watching him do that and deal with foster kids, I remember the first 2 foster kids that they had, I was with them for like a week or 2, and he would always be very slow to anger. And yeah, it was just wonderful to see. And then finally, he wrote in my high school graduation letter, he said, "Bex, you love so well. Continue now to master it. Let's do it together." Smiley face. "I will be right here, cheering as usual, as the next adventure and season unfolds. I'm honored to be your brother. Cheers, Kyle." I know he will still be cheering us all on from where he is now, and the example of love that Kyle was and is exactly what we should want to master. As his little sister, I only desire to continue his legacy of love to the world, and I am so beyond grateful to God to have such a brother to look up to for the past 19 years. I miss you, big brother, and we can't wait to see you soon.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kristen, also one of Kyle's younger sisters. As many of you know, Kyle was just as extraordinary as humans come. Every single aspect of his life was just filled with adventure and filled with love. There's not a single mediocre memory of Kyle that exists in my mind. Every single one is nothing short of incredible. My earliest memory of Kyle is actually when I was, I think, 3, and he was playing the guitar. We were at church, and he was playing the guitar, and I was singing "Nothing But the Blood of Jesus." But I sang the chorus like 9 times, and he just kept playing the guitar patiently, just, wasn't trying to get me off stage or anything. And that continued on to he just was like the most creative person. He showed me how to properly use a highlighter, and I highlighted like half the pages of Proverbs with him. And he made the most creative birthday cards. And he invited, when he went to college, he invited my sisters and I up for the coolest college visits. We got to eat in the cafeteria and be like real college kids at the age of 8 and 9. He just made you feel so special and so cool. I don't know if anyone else had a brother that was pen pals with them through college, but throughout college, Kyle and I wrote letters back and forth, and there was like times where he would be, in his letters, he would say, "It's 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm a lifeguard right now, and, I had time to write you a letter at 4 o'clock in the morning." And he continued that all the way up until I got married, and I will cherish those for the rest of my life. And as I grew older, Kyle just had such an incredible positive influence on my life. He really had me searching for answers to questions that I didn't even know I had. He would just encourage me to seek out truth, and it was so incredible. And he introduced me to the art of espressos and cortados and showed me the coolest coffee shops in Colorado whenever I came out. And he made me realize that my taste in music and in literature was practically like basic white girl, and helped me find a whole new appreciation for literature and for poetry and good music. He also greatly encouraged me to pursue my interest in law and politics. He was always a phone call away from offering advice and stories. I once did a paper on the effects of healthcare and I was like all determined to write this perfect speech for why healthcare, universal healthcare is bad and all this stuff. And he's like, well, wait a minute, what about this, this, and this? I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm wrong. But he just always left me feeling so special and so valued and so appreciated. I'm sure he has probably helped you guys all feel that same way. This past summer, I was able to spend 8 days in Colorado with Kyle, Hope, and Max. I was out here for an equestrian clinic. But when I wasn't riding horses, Kyle made sure every single minute of that time was filled with fun. We went on a camping trip. We went to several different coffee shops. We went on brunch dates. Kyle and Hope rescheduled one of their entire nights to take me out to the fanciest dinner I have ever been to in my entire life. We went to Denver. We managed to squeeze in a trip to the ER. And despite having half my face bloodied up, we went and saw the musical Les Mis and was able to spend a night at a super awesome hotel in Denver. And Kyle had dropped his life to make sure I could experience more of this wonderful, incredible life. And, and just like those 8 days were filled with life and excitement and joy and chaos, quite frankly, too, they were kind of a reflection of Kyle's 29 years of life. They were just packed full of love and adventure and just excitement. And even though I can't quite put it into words, I can't quite explain it or capture it, I believe all of you know that Kyle had a capacity to love people and to love his Savior more than anyone I've ever seen before. And there's no doubt in my mind that Kyle's legacy will be one of love, and I am so happy and feel so blessed to be a part of his legacy of love. Thank you.
Oh boy, there's a lot of you. Okay. Hi, my name is Kyle Forti. I am Kyle's second younger sister. When I was thinking about what to say, there was one story that kept on coming back to me that is just kind of funny. When I was out in Colorado during November, Kyle took me and Rebecca skiing on Thanksgiving. And we started on the bunny trails because neither of us had ever skied, and I probably fell just continuously over and over and over again. And we took a short break, and when we came back, Kyle accidentally took us up the wrong ski run, and we had to go down a blue, which I don't know if you know what that is, but the order of ski hardness, it's bunny trails, greens, blues, and then blacks, so it's the second hardest. So we were going down, and Kyle and I accidentally collided, and for 2 minutes, I thought I had broken Kyle's leg. And so we got back up, and I got about another 10 feet, and Kyle passed me, and then I fell again, and I couldn't get back up. So Kyle probably hiked about 20 feet uphill with skis on to just help me up, then to have to do it about another 20 feet because I fell again. So that was fun. So it was really hard getting down the rest of the way. And then for the rest of the night, we joked about the fact that I nearly broke Kyle's leg. And then later that evening, it was a ton of fun because Hope really wanted Cheez-Its. So we went to Walmart Thursday night. So it's Thanksgiving, so Black Friday shopping had already started. And Kyle hates Black Friday, hates it. So we went inside to Walmart, faced all the crowds just to get Cheez-Its, and I'm pretty sure he just complained about Black Friday the entire time in the store. It was hilarious. So yeah, there's that little thing. So one of the biggest things that I thought about Kyle was just how on earth in such a short amount of time did he get so much done. And the night before, I think it was Wednesday night, before we went on the ski trip, we had a short conversation. Because I came out of my room, it was super late, and he was in there making himself a drink and reading a book, because I'm pretty sure every night I would come out and Kyle would always be making a drink. That was really fun. And so basically it was very short, but basically all he really talked about was the fact that so many people are always planning for the future and never and forget to really enjoy the here and now, and forget to just love what they're doing and love the people that they have right in front of them, because they're always thinking about what the future is going to hold. And basically what he said is the difference that we need to remember is that we need to stop and enjoy now. Love that person now. Go on that trip now. Have so much fun now, because you never know if you'll ever get that now again. So that's what I mostly remembered about Kyle, and he was just such an amazing inspiration. So when I see him again, I'm just going to say thank you. Thank you for being that inspiration. Thank you.
I'm Kyle's mom. Good afternoon. I share in thanking all of you for being here. We are so profoundly grateful. When I think of all the many changes and all of your schedules to get here so you could be with us to celebrate, I am reminded of a conversation I had with Kyle when he was about 14. And Kyle liked to be on schedule back in those days. Every night he'd have a schedule, boom, boom, boom. This is what I'm going to get done. I'm going to get it all done. And I had just given birth to his sister, Promise, who just finished speaking. And he came in, and Kyle was always really good about helping with his siblings. Very good. But he came in and he said, Mom, the way for me to stay on schedule is you need to stop having babies. And I said, well, perhaps God is trying to teach you a little bit of flexibility. So, which probably helped a lot when all the foster kids came. But so the last few days, I can almost hear Kyle in the back of my mind saying, hey, Mom, remember that talk about flexibility? Well, right back at you. So, again, I thank you all for being here. Kyle would be so mindful of all your many sacrifices and the resources that taken to get you here. I have a very short time at the podium. I mean, I could talk, as you can tell from his siblings, we just have this thing with talking. But I could talk for a long time, but my time is short. I do want to ask you all a favor. I have a request. As we've already mentioned, it's already been mentioned, all of your heartfelt notes and, oh my gosh, opening of homes and the flowers and food and everything else has just been a blessing to all of us. And so as your days and your weeks and your years go on, I'd like you to consider just dropping Hope a text or maybe posting something on social media, just letting her know that you're still thinking of Kyle. Maybe it's just a picture or funny memory, but just letting her know that Kyle's still in your heart. Your remembrance will surely comfort her and therefore be a blessing and a joy to Maximus and the new baby as well. Hope Forti is simply an outstanding woman, and that is precisely why Kyle married her. I am so blessed. So now, on to Kyle. Hey, 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 as he would say when he walked into a room. I think we all know that Kyle, or we all feel that Kyle was so young to have died. However, he was so much older than most of us. When Kyle was probably about 2 years old, I would sometimes take him in to work with me, and I remember my coworker saying, "Why do you talk to him like he's 20 years old?" And then every Christmas when we'd watch It's a Wonderful Life, there's a line in the movie at the dinner table where George Bailey is talking to his father, Peter Bailey, and Peter says to George, "George, you were born old." And that line has always reminded me of Kyle, always, every time we watch it. And Kyle's business partner, Caleb, remarked when meeting Kyle, "You are just too old to be 25. And as my brother Mark said, and I think Russell said too, one of my children said this, Actually, I think it was Joshua. I don't know anyone who crammed so much life into 29 years. Suffice to say, I think Kyle outaged and outlived many of us in this room. I don't know how many 12-year-olds who would be excited to get a Black's Law dictionary for their birthday, but I wish I had the picture that showed you how happy he was. Kyle started an NCFCA speech and debate at a young age, and as such became skilled at speaking and debating. From those very early years, he had to be prepared to debate both sides of any case, which is why I think to this day he knew the value of listening to both sides of any issue. I often told him that he needed to know his audience well before going in to speak on any issue, knowing that each person in the audience has their own story that adds something to the conversation. The subject of Christian apologetics, answering questions of the faith, was also a topic on his NCFCA speaking schedule and began our journey together of asking many questions. Early on in researching theological questions, one of the staples in Kyle's resources was Ravi Zacharias. In fact, as I was hurriedly heading out the door to the airport last week to see Max and Hope, I literally stopped at the door and said, "Everybody stop what you're doing. You have to help me find the book, Recapture the Wonder, written by Ravi." It was one that Kyle and I both enjoyed early on. In one of the opening lines of the book, Ravi writes about what life is intended to be, quote, "the thrill of wonder and the irresistible urge to share it." I think we could all agree that that was certainly reflected in Kyle's life. He loved Ravi's ability to speak both to the heart and the head, and how he used poetry and story to do so, to convey the human condition, something I think Kyle did so well himself. Kyle and I were very, very close. I need a water bottle. Next, of course, to Hope and Max. And actually, Hope said this to some friends visiting just a couple days ago. He would often tell me I was his best friend and favorite person to hang out with. He was so excited every time I would come to visit, often saying, "I can't wait for you to get here." The problem is we never stopped talking, so we never got much sleep. As we talked about God, man relationship to God, and how that all works out in politics, art, music, and culture into the wee hours of the morning. Last year at this time, he called me and said, "Hey, Mom, I have an extra ticket to Hamilton. How about I fly you out so you can see it with me and Hope?" It was going to be less than 18 hours to be with them, but of course I said okay. And we crammed so much into those 18 hours. From the moment he picked me up from the airport, there was nonstop talking, to a wonderful dinner. Of course, we all know Kyle's love for good food. A great play, then talking into the night again about the nature of the human soul. We awoke early the next morning to attend a workshop on Montessori education and made a quick stop at an art display at the library before heading off for me to catch the train back to the airport, and I think we did that all before noon. We literally thrived on all of it. Just about 48 hours before Kyle left for Kenya, we were messaging over Facebook discussing some political issue of the day. And then our conversation turned to a debate that he and I both had watched between Christian apologist Andy Bannister and atheist Peter Singer. He absolutely loved the debate and how Andy portrayed the Christian message. And he said this is exactly why he was confident there was a God and he would always be a theist. When rewatching the debate, I could almost imagine Kyle sitting there, responding just like Andy Bannister, just very kind and thoughtful and humble, speaking of Kant and Locke and Plato. If any of you ever want a taste of the things that Kyle and I used to talk about, just watch this debate, and you'll get a great example of it. Kyle would agree with the statement that Christianity best explained man's condition, and Christ was the answer for man's maladies. Perhaps that is why Mario, I might not get this name right, Nicola's tribute to him stated, quote, "It seemed to me that Kyle believed we already had the answers to our most pressing questions. We just needed to apply them," end quote. However, Kyle did abhor the politicizing of religion and how historically it was used for abuse for power and control. Kyle hated hypocrisy. He was an avid reader of all worldviews and so many other disciplines and often quoted things he could agree with. The books he read covered a wide swath of thought. Kyle understood, like Andy Bannister said in the debate, that life is messy and answers cannot be tied up in neat little bows. Kyle felt that the best way to live out his faith was to live a well-lived life by loving God and then loving those around him. And I think we would all agree he did that very well. So now we move to when I received the call at 10 p.m. 2 weeks ago. Yes, I screamed, and yes, I cried. It was shockingly stunning. However, I'm going to tell you that I was not surprised. First, let me tell you that Kyle would tell you I am the most pragmatic person he knew. There is nothing remotely psychic, mythical, or esoteric about my thinking. I am very nuts and bolts. However, I will share that for some time, and I couldn't tell you exactly when, in Kyle's teen years, I guess I would say I had some kind of premonition that Kyle might not live a long life. I always just blew it off as some type of stupid mom worry. Every mother in this room would know what I'm talking about. But as I look over the last year, I can see the hand of God all over the place preparing me for that phone call. To say that my heart is at peace with Kyle's passing would be too strong of a statement. But I can tell you that for me, a woman who has spent asking questions for most of her adult life of faith and of God, I have not asked the question of why in regards to Kyle's passing. God prepared me too well. In closing, it was about last week, that Hope asked if I would be interested in going out to their foster son's Xavier's house to let him know of Kyle's passing. I said yes and made the drive with Karen, his guardian ad litem, to the group home where Xavier lives. Upon arriving, I greeted Xavier with a hug and commented on how tall he'd gotten. Then we sat down. Xavier was on the love seat and I was on the couch facing him. I started my conversation to him saying, Xavier, one thing I've asked my kids over the years for Mother's Day is I just would like some of their favorite scripture, their favorite songs. It makes for a good playlist for sure, of a wide variety of one. One of Kyle's verses that he gave me is from Psalm 27, and it says, "One thing I have asked of the Lord, that I will seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple." And then I continued, Xavier, that's what Kyle is doing right now. He's in heaven enjoying all that is true and beautiful and good. And you know what, Xavier? God gave you an incredible gift by putting Kyle in your life. You see, Xavier, you've pretty much known nothing but brokenness in your life, and so have many around you. You've had no one taking care of your heart the way that God intended it to be taken care of. But you know what, Xavier? Kyle showed you how to do that. He told you how to take care of people's hearts. So now you can take what Kyle has shown you, and you can go and do that for other people. Xavier, you can change people's lives because now you can help people learn how to take care of other people's hearts. And he slowly nodded. I'm pretty sure Kyle showed us all how to do that. He would tell us to just show up and do something for someone. And if Xavier, in all of his brokenness, thinks he can give that a try, I'm pretty confident that the rest of us surely have the ability to do so as well. As we remember from the 25th chapter of the book of Matthew, Jesus says, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." May we all celebrate Kyle's life well by continuing on with that legacy. Thank you.
We're Hope's parents, and we were privileged and honored to be at their beautiful wedding where that song was sung all together with their families. It's a very, very special time. As Hope's parents, we had the delight of watching their thriving, vibrant love between her and Kyle blossom and grow. 12 years ago, when Hope was a determined 16-year-old, she planned a trip to the East Coast to check out colleges. But little did we know, her main motivation was really to check out Kyle. So he was there to compete in a speech and debate tournament, and she had become aware of him through her online homeschool community. That first in-person meeting began their vibrant journey together. Her dad and I first met him a few months later when he and a friend traveled one day from LA to San Francisco and back in his grandpa's borrowed car. And that just shows the vibrancy and determination of him and his courtship with Hope, his love for her. They met us for lunch, and then he and Hope took off to explore the city, along with plenty of chaperones, her brother, her best friend Rachel, who is here, and his best friend Daniel, who I think might be here as well. So that just demonstrates, it's just the start of what shows their energy, drive, and tenacity that they invested in each other from very early on. They continued their long-distance romance between our home in little rural Lake County, California, and kind of pretty rural or small Hillsdale, Michigan, where he was going to school. They would sacrifice in their meager student budgets to fly back and forth once in a while, and had constant communication. I could always tell when Hope was talking or texting with Kyle because of the delighted smile on her face. And that smile has always been there with him. They grew in their faith together as they sought God's face, and their lives reflected that from early on through now, with their dedication to each other and their commitment to their families and their community. When they were finally able to marry at the time of Kyle's graduation, when we sang the beautiful song that we just sang together, they tackled the challenge of quickly changing their wedding plans from California to Indiana because of a family illness. They took that challenge head on and made something that was very, very difficult into something beautiful. The resulting small family wedding turned out to be a joyful, wonderful day, and Hope's and Kyle's faces shone with pure love and joy. If you ever get the chance to watch their wedding video, it's amazing. Their marriage and parenting of Max, baby P, Xavier, and other children that they welcomed into their home continued on with their great love, the love that they poured out because of their love of God and their love of each other. Last month, Max told me that his daddy is always very nice to him and talks to a lot of people. And we have seen the result of that, of Kyle's, his exuberance, his love for people. Max certainly knows that, so he experienced that, and so many, all of us here have as well. Over the last few weeks, we've really become aware of that, the outpouring of your love and graciousness to Hope and Max and the new baby and all of us, and we appreciate it so much. And it's just a result of Kyle's caring, loving ways. And their new little baby, whose heart beats strong, carries on Kyle's vibrant life. And we're so thankful for that. A few months ago, when we were in the kitchen together, Max and Kyle were talking about heaven and death, just an impromptu way. And Kyle just very naturally was talking with Max about that. And he assured Max that they would all be together after death. And I'm so thankful that Max heard that straight from his daddy, and that we can look forward to the day when there will be no more tears, because they will be rejoicing together with their vibrant love with God. Thank you.
Seven years ago, Lisa and we passed along a gift to the son of Scott and Ann Forti, a gift that was one we received 21 years before from the God who made the heavens and the earth. That gift was our daughter, Hope. And as a witness to the joy and the hope as a witness to the joy of Hope and Kyle's marriage, I praise God that he joined them together as a family. And I will be forever grateful to God for that blessing to participate in such a profound and beautiful part of his creation. And I weep bitter, bitter tears that it ended so soon. And now the world is less. Thank you all for coming. And I say to all of you who are here and to all of you who knew Kyle and Hope, I would like to get to know you better, because every time I speak with one of you, I'm encouraged to be more like Kyle. And that is a good thing. Thank you.
Good afternoon. We're Colton, Rachel, friends of Kyle and Hope. In the brief minutes we have, it's impossible to give you any more than a glimpse of who Kyle was to us and who we knew him to be. But here is a glimpse.
He was one of the most generous friends I have known. Whether he was lending me a book, offering to watch our kids, inviting us to dinner, or sharing a recommendation, if he could help or share or do or give, he would do it with complete openness of heart and hand.
He held space for everyone. He was dispassionate and unthreatened by the spectrum of differences he encountered. It wasn't that he was blind. On the contrary, he was incredibly, almost uncomfortably, perceptive and insightful. He saw people for all that we are, for all of our goodness, but also for all of our quirks and foibles. And yet he never shied away from anyone. There were times when I felt like he saw me even for the choices he would not have agreed with. And yet those differences never stopped him from engaging with me, with us, and others, with authenticity.
All of us who are gathered here this evening collectively represent a microcosm of our society. That Kyle unites us says so much about who he was and what could be. But though he embraced everyone as worthy of respect and relationship, he wasn't swayed by the myriad opinions. He possessed such a solid sense of self, and his convictions were clear-eyed and unapologetic. He knew who he was. He knew who he wanted to be. He knew who he didn't want to be, and he had the self-awareness and the determination to chart his course. He was incredibly ambitious and driven, and I say that with none of the negative connotations that sometimes stick to those adjectives. There's a line in a book we gave Kyle 3 Christmases ago in which a man named Paul Colonithi writes, "You can't ever reach perfection, but you can believe in an asymptote towards which you are ceaselessly striving." And that was Kyle.
More than anything else, what most epitomized the sense of certainty and single-mindedness was his love for Hope and his children. There was no one else for him but Hope. It was always Hope. And as much as any human can be known and loved by another, Hope and Kyle were known and loved by the other. If I could use just one word to describe their marriage, it would be synchrony. There is a line in one of the songs that will be sung this evening. When you love someone, you see the face of God. Out of their sacred partnership emerged their devotion as parents, and this vast heart space in which the excluded were welcomed and truly seen.
We could go on about his intellectual honesty, his presence, his razor-sharp wit and humor, but we will stop here. Kyle, it was our deepest honor and privilege to know you. You will be so missed. It will be hard to go anywhere in this town without being reminded of you in some way. I was looking forward to taking the kids skiing together, to the two of us joining forces in trying to persuade our wives that backpacking with our families this summer was a really good idea.
There is no one else with whom I can discuss theosis, atonement, the autobiography of an Indian yogi, the Enneagram, and Lalabo's infamous Santal 33. I cannot believe we will never again hear your booming, ebullient greeting when we enter your home.
But we will remember you. We will walk with hope. We will hold these memories for your children. We remember you tonight, Kyle, and we will remember you in the days and years to come. Memory eternal.
Hello, my name is Deacon Gregory Jewett. Our family's known Kyle and Hope for many years now, since they began attending Holy Theophany. And we have the unique blessing of being godparents to Maximus, which binds us yet deeper. Our children had the unique joy of working for Kyle from time to time, from raking leaves and other chores at their home, which always seemed to involve Nintendo too. Including just a few Saturdays ago, Kyle employed Wyatt to run to Denver to get his TV for the Oscars party at their home. They always loved being with Kyle and Hope have always loved my children, and we as a family have been blessed by their love. There remained much of Kyle that I didn't know, and I longed to dig deeper with him because I always enjoyed our time spent together, and each time we did spend together, we went deeper. But while there was much I didn't know, there was much that was known to me, and that is what I want to share. If you ever had the opportunity to be with Kyle, you always felt welcome as the most important person in the room. He had the virtue of hospitality, and anytime we came over for dinner or an evening together, he would welcome us with his enthusiastic personality, and then like clockwork say, "Can I make you a drink?" I would, of course, say yes, and he would go into a passionate explanation of the concoction he was going to make me with liquors and bitters and lemon peels and other unknown substances. And while I was never quite certain what it was I was drinking, I sat mesmerized at the love he poured into the drink, which didn't seem to be so much about the drink, but about the fact that he wanted to honor and show love to me, and this was how he did it. I love those concoctions. Our last dinner as couples together, we walked downtown to Fratelli's, and I noticed a bottle of Brunello on the wine list. And my wife and I started talking about our trip to Italy and visiting Montalcino. Kyle didn't miss a moment. He piped up. He goes, "Well, let's have a bottle then." For a moment, I hesitated because I kind of guessed the price tag on that bottle. But Kyle loved to seize moments, and you couldn't help seizing them with him. I said, "Of course." And we enjoyed that bottle with dinner. As the waitress came back for round two, I thought to myself, I wonder if they have any $2 chuck. But Kyle jumped in and said, "That Brunello was incredible. Should we have another?" I looked at him, smiled, and seized the moment with him and said, "Absolutely." I'm so glad I did, and I will so miss these moments together. Memory eternal, Kyle.
My name is Michelle. I met Kyle in high school, and I developed a deep respect for his intellect and skill over dozens of lost debate rounds. Over the years, my friendship with Kyle and Hope has grown as I've looked to both of them for inspiration on how to live my own wild and precious life. I know that Kyle has filled so many different roles for different people in this room, and I just want to talk about the role that Kyle filled for me, that of co-foster parent in the trenches. When my sister and I became foster parents in Colorado 4 years ago, we were desperate to find a safe emotional space to process the challenges of being a foster parent with someone who understood our heart for kids and also the grief and hardship that comes with loving and saying goodbye to children. We found that in Kyle. Kyle loved being a dad. To Max, Xavier, Prince, and the girls, Kyle also just got it. Loving and advocating for kids is not for the faint of heart, and Kyle held both tensions in balance. He knew that love is hard and that love is beautiful. On the hardest of days, Kristen and I could tell Hope and Kyle our tales of woe, and Kyle would listen with empathy and then a shared story of his own. And then he had always had this way of retelling the story to make the circumstances just feel hilarious. When I think of Kyle, I think of laughter. In remembering Kyle, there's a short quote that I'd like to give back to Hope. The quote is from Ian Thomas, and it's one that Kyle, Hope, and Max gave to Kristen and I when we were going through a tough time. The author writes this: "Be soft. Do not let the world make you hard. Do not let the pain make you hate. And do not let the bitterness steal your sweetness." In my mind, this is exactly who Kyle is. He wasn't unfamiliar with the pain or the circumstances that can lead to bitterness, but Kyle had this amazing ability for keeping his softness and his sweetness close. He believed the world to be a beautiful place, and his way of living made it so. 2 years ago, Kristen and I were having a really hard week with our teenager, and Hope and Kyle agreed to meet me for lunch. All I could see that day was how tired and impatient and burdened I felt. I just have this image of Kyle and Max walking into Union Station together, carrying this handful of pink roses to give to me and my teenager. Kyle explained to Max, "We always find ways to give beautiful things to our friends." Over the last week and a half, I know that many in this room have grappled with how short and fragile life is, and I've wrestled with that as well. I don't have any words I don't think that will add clarity, so I just want to share one more line of poetry that I've carried close over the last week. "The candle burns at both ends, it will not last the night. But oh, my foes and all my friends, it gives a lovely light." Kyle, you burned at both ends of the candle and did more in a few years than most of us will do in a lifetime. Your light is lovely. We'll miss the physical presence of your force, your energy, and your ability to get things done. But your cause, legacy, and work is beautiful. And now, Hope, it's my greatest honor to put a hand on Kyle's torch and help you carry his light forward.
I'm Lee Hopper, close friend of Kyle, and I've worked for him pretty much my entire professional career. My goal during my time with you today is to share a few words from the perspective of a friend. Kyle was my RA my freshman year of college. He was 2 years older than me, but our friendship developed very quickly. To this day, I couldn't tell you the reasons why. We just always got each other. One of the first things I remember learning about Kyle was that he was in love with Hope, and he had the weirdest sleep and work schedule I had ever seen. He was also not an early riser. He would stay up half the night talking with Hope, and then maybe get some studies done for a couple hours around 2 a.m. You see, it was a lot easier for him just to stay up for his 4 a.m. lifeguard duty than to get up for it. I remember asking him why he had a job at 4 a.m. when he hated getting up so early. Turns out, he was saving every penny he could for an engagement ring. I also quickly learned that Kyle was incredibly gifted at many of these subject fields at Hillsdale, our school. But Spanish was not one of them. We roomed together his senior year, and he had the brilliant idea that we should take Spanish at 8 a.m. so we could just get it over with each day. Terrible idea. One of us would wake the other up at around 7:52 a.m., and then we would quite literally run to class through the snow and other elements, him in flip-flops. And we would fill out our homework as we ran to class because we had quickly learned that the homework sheets were graded on whether or not you filled in the blank with a Spanish word and not if it was a correct Spanish word or if it made any sense. Kyle and I began working together a year later while I was still in school. This would grow into 2 different businesses, always on an upward trajectory. After school, Kyle's strange schedule continued, though, but for different reasons. You could never expect to get a hold of him before 8 a.m., but you also should not expect to hear much from him after 4:30 p.m., because family time was the highest priority for Kyle, and he always spent his evening hours with them. That is, before blowing you up with emails from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. when he got caught up. Kyle changed a lot from our time in college to his passing, but there was one true constant from the day I met him: his love of hope, and later, his love of his children. Kyle had a holistic approach to everything. His business, family, fostering, vacationing, and other endeavors all overlapped. As both his friend and colleague who was the most plugged into his day-to-day besides hope, I could not even begin to keep track of all the things he had going. But they would randomly pop up in our business, personal adventures, and other things we shared, because for him, it was all connected and not a segmentation of his life. In closing, by the grace of God, I have felt one thing consistently in this short time since his passing: thankful. I'm thankful for all the truly good people I know and knew together with Kyle, many of whom are in this room. I'm thankful for the impact that Kyle had on my life. I'm thankful for the impact he had on the lives of everyone here, and I'm thankful for his impact upon this world. Godspeed, Kyle. All of us will carry on your legacy, and I look forward to the day I see you again.
Kyle had a way of walking the world that put you at ease, that let you know you were heard and seen. The last time I was with him was at an Oscar party. He was pouring drinks near the kitchen sink. It was just 3 weeks ago. He said I had to try some mad scientist Negroni formula he was mixing up. He was busy laughing and crafting cocktails, and I got distracted by Regina King's Beale Street acceptance speech, and we never shared that drink. Kyle had a way, like in all his fathering and traveling, there was one magical, metaphysical mystery map to somewhere beautiful and true and amazing. He was trailblazing his way to some prayer. He was picturing, painting just beyond reach. His compass dial could freestyle from California smile to Colorado wild to Patagonia style. Perhaps Kyle's mystery map traces the path to a desert oasis where X marks the spot to the treasure he sought. And on the way back, he'd courageously go the extra mile to show care for every child. Kyle was a legend, and his map was a hack to live life to the max. In the dark, he could navigate the chart for an ocean blue search and rescue quest to cross the waves from east to west to advocate for the bravest and the best you. Kyle had a map like a boss has a solution, like Prince and the Revolution. History had its eyes on Kyle, but he was not throwing away his shot, because in the end, he understood the truth that the friend mattered more than the scotch. Kyle had a way with a compass rose, a map that guided his gardening with hope, planting seeds of unity and home to foster together, a symphony of community that blooms into forever. And on this day when our travels unravel in grief, and the journey to mercy is too dark, when hearts are tear-stained and stars torn asunder, still I must confess with all the wonder in my chest that I believe in a God who is ever present at the horizon where morning meets rising. And sometimes lament means singing Alleluia in the middle of the mess. So to Kyle, today I say, as you unfold your mystery map to stories yet untold, may you sail toward glory in a love that's bigger than the sea. May you discover a true north shore and there explore a wilder light, a wider place where one day together we will dance away the entropy in that forever geography where grace beats gravity, where spirit meets eternity.
Straight into a massacre. I witnessed their deaths firsthand. I made every mistake and felt the shame rise in me. And even now I lie awake, knowing history has its eyes on me. History has its eyes on me. Let me tell you what I wish I'd known when I was young and dreamed of glory. You have no control. Who lives, who dies, who tells your story? I know that we can win. I know that greatness lies in you. But remember from here on in, history has its eyes on you. History has its eyes on you.
Since Monday, March 4th, while driving to the Capitol and learning that Kyle Forti had died, and immediately turning around, I have watched with awe the deluge of sympathy and memory. What strikes me is that the sorrow expressed in the past 2 weeks far extends Kyle's fun-loving nature and telltale loud laugh. To understand the source of sorrow, we must dip ourselves into the river of human thought, as Kyle and I often did in our conversations. We would speak of the last 70 years, from the impossibly soaring rhetoric of Kennedy and Nixon to the frustrating pugilism of our present age. Our culture has conjured the grand sorcery that government can perfect our lives, but Kyle never believed this superstition. He wisely saw that mere rhetoric leads only to disappointment and bitterness. Into this wasteland of bitterness, Kyle stampeded with energy and affection, fueled by deep thought. Whether by Dostoevsky or Mary Oliver or the memento we will receive later, penned by Gibran, Kyle was inspired to inspire us with the conclusion that every single person bears the image of love. That is, we are capable of both giving and receiving love. Kyle also knew that love is a choice. And it is a choice we cannot make if we are amused to the death of our sense to the beauty and need around us. Kyle routinely made this choice to give and receive love, and that's why we're all here. So why are we all so sorrowful? Our sorrow is not just for him and for his family, but I posit it is for ourselves as well. We are afraid, I think, without Kyle's energy and inspiration, that tomorrow, when we wake up, we won't have the courage to choose to love as he did. The zeitgeist of our age would see the death of the light of love in our lives. And if, with Kyle, we are to rage against the dying of the light, we must make this choice: to love without regard for reward, to welcome the feeble attempts at love from others. May God help us make this choice with a fond memory of our friend Kyle Forti.
My name's Kristen Parks. I'm a friend of Hope and Kyle's. CNN and Fox News have done to our parents what they feared violent video games and Marilyn Manson would do to us. Kyle Forti. I couldn't not include this quote today. It's just so unabashedly Kyle. He had this way of speaking the truth in a humorous, borderline offensive, yet somehow polite way that made people really think. Everyone who met him felt connected to him because he made everyone feel valued. He was a walking dichotomy in every way. He loved the finer things in life, but he was also passionate about simplifying. He loved his job, but his true identity was in God and his family. He loved traveling, but his favorite adventure was when he was at home with Hope and the kids. A true philosopher at heart, at his core, he was love. I have 3 boys, and my number one goal in life is to teach them and show them the importance of loving God and loving others, to love like Kyle loved. My hope for all of us who knew him is that every time we have the chance, we choose love, respect, and gentleness, keeping Kyle's spirit alive and making the world a better place through genuine connection. It's going to take a lot of us to make up for the amount of people Kyle had yet to influence. St. Paisios of Mount Athos said this about death: we must understand that the human person in reality does not die. Death is simply a transfer from one life to another. I'm so incredibly sad to not have Kyle present in this life anymore, but cannot wait to share a Negroni with him, nasty as they are, in the next.
Hello, my name is Simon Sianka, and I'm a friend of Hope and Kyle's. I want to just share a real quick story of the last time I properly hung out with Kyle, because it was really special and it was very unique to our relationship. We always wanted to hang out more, but between his very busy schedule and my travel schedule, I travel a lot as a documentary filmmaker, and we just always had a hard time actually getting our schedules to come together where we could meet up. So the last time we hung out was actually in San Francisco, because he was there for a few hours, dropping off Max, and I had just landed for a job in the Bay Area. And so I sent him a message. I go, hey, are you in San Francisco? He goes, yeah. He goes, are you? I go, yeah. He goes, well, hey, I have reservations for a table for one at, I can't remember the name of the place, some Michelin star-rated restaurant. He goes, I'm sure we can squeeze you in, because he had a table for one. I was like, great. So we met up and just had a fantastic time of deep conversation about spiritual things, about family, about life, and of course, great food and great drinks, which Kyle was always known for. And I will really cherish that because that was a special time. And when I reflect back, I'm grateful that we made that happen, very spur of the moment. You know, our world is really, full of a lot of pain and suffering. We see it all the time. And part of how we kind of find meaning in life in the midst of this suffering world is to be bearers of light, of hope, and of joy. And Kyle did that. Kyle did that. Whether through his work in the political sphere, as a friend, a husband, and a father, he lived his life in a way to relieve the suffering of others. I'll always remember his contagious smile, lively conversations over cocktails, and his inspiring actions of fatherhood and his advocacy for the fatherless. He desired to leave this world a better place than he found it, and Kyle did that. He found meaning by stepping into the suffering and pain of others and bringing joy, hope, wonder, and light. May the remembrance of his life and action inspire us all to do the same. When joining and being baptized into the Orthodox Church, Kyle asked me if I would be his sponsor, his godfather in the faith. It's a special, unique relationship that I will always hold dear. As a godfather, your responsibility, first and foremost, is to pray for your godchildren. And ever since that day, Kyle, along with Hope and their children, have been in my family's daily prayers. One of the beautiful things in the Orthodox faith is that we don't stop praying for our friends and family once they have departed this life. They remain in our prayers, and we remain connected as a spiritual family in Christ. And Hope, you and your children are in our daily prayers, and Kyle will be in my prayers until the day I depart from this life. May his memory be eternal.
I am Grace. I am Hope's sister. And I've known Kyle through Hope for a long, long time. They started talking when they were 16, and one of the things that I'm most thankful from Kyle for is that he was an encourager, especially to my sister. We grew up in a very small town, and when they got together, something ignited between the two of them, and it pushed her and it pushed him to become more than they ever would have been apart. So I'm thankful that they were able to be together and to have that love and to share it with everyone here and so many more that they affected that were not able to make it today. In 2012, Hope and Kyle invited me to live with them in Colorado. So I moved out when I was 18 and came here from our small town in California. They were like 6 months married at the time, maybe. And I just think that is a testament to the kind of friend that he is, to the kind of husband that he is, to sacrifice that time to include me in that. And I was looking through Facebook the other day and just happened upon this post that he wrote to me in 2012, right before I moved out to him. And it was a list of his rules that he had given me that I would have to follow as I stayed with them. The first one was no staying out past 10 p.m. I needed to be home before dark, 8 p.m. No grabbing anything out of the fridge unless I ask. Only 30 minutes of internet per day. Parental controls included. I own your phone, I own your friends, I own your life. If you know Kyle, you know that he did not care about rules. You know that the status quo was frustrating to him because it didn't allow enough space for humanity. And he showed us how to gracefully break the rules of life by loving his wife, by by loving his children, and by loving us so well. He fought to make the world better, and he fought that way individually with each of his relationships with each one of you and with us. And we are so thankful to have this time that we've had with him and to have his memory so that we continue living out his life forever.
My name is Sam Sells, and there was another Sam who was supposed to speak with us as well, so that was Sam Stevenson. These are both of our words. Orion, Andromeda, Leo, Pisces, Virgo, Kyle John Forti. Or to me, 40. Astronomers recognize 88 different constellations. In fact, a new one has not been added in years. I'm not sure I can convince NASA to add one this evening. But that doesn't matter, because 40 was a constellation to everyone in this room. A constellation is a cadre of stars that forms a recognizable pattern. Each one of us beheld the constellation that was Kyle, but certain stars of his being shine more brightly depending on who you are. Some saw the star of husband, of father, of family member, of coworker, of friend. That is the star that I saw, and here are some stories of that burning light. 40, you once invited me to hot yoga, and I have never been more comfortable next to a man drenched in sweat, grunting, and reaching for being. 40, you once spoke of freedom in a way that few can. I asked you, what was the linchpin to that freedom? You replied, your wife, Hope. 40, you once wrote in a journal, I guess not for very long, that you wanted us to write together. We should have written poetry and essays and film reviews. I'm sorry, that didn't happen. 40, you once, no, scratch that. Every time we met, you spoke of fatherhood in a light so radiant, I just wanted to bask in it. You talked about how you couldn't wait to be a theater dad, writing scripts, designing sets, and cheering your kids on with a passion that would put every sports-obsessed dad to shame. 40, you once wrote me a text message. In fact, it was the last conversation we ever had. We were both lamenting the way in which human hands, no, our hands were destroying the earth. We were mourning the trees. And in the middle of this mourning, you wrote, I fucking love you. I say that not to offend, but because he did. 40, you are a constellation. These are some of the stars that we saw. And here we are. Every person in here met you in the stars, saw the beauty of your strung together life. Today we join you in the stars, only to say we love you. We were astonished by you. We were moved by you. And we will meet you when we look up.
My name is Abby Meyer, and I was a friend of Kyle and an employee. Kyle Forti changed my life. I know all of you are sitting here today because he changed yours too. I know that deep down in every fiber of my being because that's the man that he was. Oozing of generosity and charisma. He made you feel at home from the moment you met him. Kyle is the reason that my husband and I even ended up in Colorado. He took a chance on me by bringing me into the DCO family with minimal prior experience because he believed in me. He was good at that, believing in people even when they don't recognize their own light. I consider myself one of the lucky ones to have lived life so closely with Kyle and Hope. Just a few days before he passed, I told him that he had this weird, magical way of running a company that never made it feel like a hierarchy. We always only ever felt respect from him. And because of that deep respect, his friendship always transcended his role as boss. He saw us as family, and so we became just that, a part of his family. Kyle drew us into a vibrant world filled with cocktails and hot yoga and theology and discussions of good literature. He always made us laugh and think and live life the way that life was meant to be lived. My life has so much more color in it because of Kyle. The best part about him was how deeply he loved. He loved every single person around him with a fierceness that shifted the world. He loved because he cared, and he cared because he loved, and you could never separate that from who he was, because at the core of his very being was his heart for others. I wish I could tell you all the stories about him, and I tell you about all the trips that he took our team on, and the times that we shared over a meal and lively discussion and debate, how he pushed me beyond my limitations, and how he gave over and over again of his time and energy and money and love. Every single one of us in this room, we're his legacy. The way he pushed us and challenged us and changed us, he loved each of us so well. And even though the pain is fresh and it's real, we can continue his legacy of love because of who he was. He fought against the dying of the light, and we can too, because he taught us how.
I'm Hope's youngest sister, Joy, and I had the privilege of spending much of my elementary and middle school and even high school years in their home. And I remember one day when I was about 13, I was visiting them, and Kyle decided he wanted to take me skiing, another skiing story, of course. And so he settled on Monarch Mountain, which is about a 2.5-hour drive. And we got all my gear, we left really early in the morning, and then about halfway up the mountain, I started feeling not very well. And I had never been that far into the mountain before, so I didn't really know my body's reaction to altitude. And I felt a little bit better after I had some water. And so we pushed through it, we got up to the top of the run, and it hit me. And I think it took us, we probably broke the record for slowest descent ever, because Kyle basically skied for the both of us as I just tried not to lay down and take a nap right there on the slope. So by the time we got to the flat part, he told me to take my skis off. He carried my skis all the way back to the resort, probably about 50 yards. And I'm happy to say, as I was resting inside, he did get in a few good runs, so it wasn't a waste. But that became one of my most cherished memories with him because of the drive back. The entire 2.5 hours, he filled it with laughter and empathy. It is one of my richest memories of him as my big brother and friend. And I want to come back to what Hope said about his passion for the empowerment and encouragement of women. That is so evident that he made incredible strides in that mission in the way that he treated his sisters and his friends and his wife. And for me, I felt that the most when he took me to the movies, because the car ride back was always filled with wonderful conversations that gave me respect and self-confidence. So I want to finish with a quote from the first movie he ever took me to see at 11 years old. It's called Beasts of the Southern Wild. When it all goes quiet behind my eyes, I see everything that made me flying around in invisible pieces. When I look too hard, it goes away. And when it all goes quiet, I see they are right here. I see that I am a little piece of a big, big universe, and that makes things right.
Hey everybody, I'm Peter, and this is mine and Kyle's gay friend Ben. It'll make sense in a minute. So I'll be honest, I feel completely unworthy being up here. Kyle was a good friend of mine, but I wasn't in his inner circle or anything like that. He was a really good person, and I'm not even in the same universe. And thank you, Hope, so much for inviting me. I will remember this for the rest of my life. I'm not a fancy enough dresser to be up here. Ben joked that I was the straight dude who went to Men's Warehouse. Kyle was the straight dude who actually had style. So I wore a pocket square, though, today. That's about the best I could do. My socks match, so take that, Kyle. But I think I know why Hope asked us up here to offer some remarks. You know, Ben and I share a similar story to many of you out there. You know, we met Kyle in a professional capacity, but overnight, you know, he became an incredibly close friend. And he wanted to treat you like family once you were that friend. I remember being invited over to Hope and Kyle's for dinner. We took the tour, usual house tour, immaculate house, by the way, not overstated like them. And Kyle obviously stopped to make drinks, which we all heard. I think they were old fashions, thank God, not Negronis, because thank you for paving the way for me. They're disgusting. Take that again, Kyle. Yeah. Anyway, Max was running around the house, smiling, laughing as always, led us across the yard to meet Xavier, a remarkable little dude who had so much to share with us. That's when you really saw Kyle's face light up, just as it did when he was around Prince and always for Max and Baby. For Kyle, nothing was more important than family, and his family was extended, it was large. Kyle may physically be asleep now, but his spirit is all around us, always. He set the most positive example of what a good man looks like, and I aspire to continue to follow his lead to be a better person. Even though he was 7 years younger than me, he was like my older brother in a way. You know, if we all here continue to keep that example that Kyle showed alive with us, his light will always shine bright around us, and we love you, brother. Thank you, Kyle.
I'm Benjamin Waters. I was Kyle's gay friend, as Peter said. I was also one of those lobbyists and political consultants from the other side of the aisle that valued and treasured him every single day. Kyle and I shared a love of traveling, politics, and journalism. A week prior to the 2016 election, I was traveling in the tiny Himalayan kingdom of Bhutan and received one of my regular group texts from Kyle and Peter. Apparently, snarky Facebook comments we made about elected officials taking ballot selfies were being entered into the district court record about a lawsuit around the legality of voters taking pictures of their ballots and then putting them on social media. Kyle and I had a great many debates publicly and privately about a great many things, but we never would have imagined that our banter would end up playing a small part in updating our election laws in the digital age. Peter called me on Monday morning to give me the horrible news. I was getting an oil change, and I somehow kept it together until I got into my car, and then I cried, and I immediately put on Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen on repeat. That song can mean a great many things to a great many people, but to me it is about the faith each person holds and expresses differently in their own way. And the faith Kyle lived every day reminded me of my own Jesuit Catholic upbringing, when we took care of those who needed it and without judgment, and let God sort out the rest. As the lobbyist for Fostering Colorado, the statewide association of foster care, adoption, and refugee resettlement agencies, Kyle and I also shared a passion for reforming the child welfare system. I hope this is the legacy he leaves behind, because I know that it was the most important thing in the world to Kyle and Hope. They regularly sought to slay the shibboleths of our child welfare system, whether it was looking for new ways to help families through policy changes like Safe Families, for which Kyle's mom is a volunteer in Indiana, or beginning fostering together, which we have heard about before. Having fostered 4 children themselves, they knew all too well the challenges of our current system and fought relentlessly to reduce barriers and to provide support. Another passion for Kyle was art and literature, and a song from an artist he helped introduce me to came on the other day in the car. Janelle Monáe is an African-American queer singer with an edge, and Kyle loved her passion. The song Americans begins with the following lyrics. Hold on, don't fight your war alone. Hate all around you, don't have to face it on your own. We will win this fight, let all souls be brave. We'll find a way to heaven, we will find a way. We love you, Kyle, we love you, Hope and Max, and we will find a way.
I'm Jonalyn Fincher, friend and pastor to the Fortis. Hope also worked with us at our nonprofit. In honor of Kyle and Hope, my husband Dale Fincher and I put together this collage of scripture. I'll begin with a passage Kyle and Hope memorized together, and then move to those passages that have comforted me in the dark nights. From 2 Corinthians 5, Psalm 40, 57, and 61. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creature. The old things passed away. Behold, new things have come. Now all these things are from God, who reconciled us to himself through Christ and gave us the ministry of reconciliation. Namely, that God was in Christ reconciling the world to himself, not counting their trespasses against them. And he has committed to us the word of reconciliation. Be merciful to me, O God, be merciful to me. For my soul trusts in you, and in the shadow of your wings I will make my refuge until these calamities have passed by. I will cry out to God Most High, to God who performs all things for me. He shall send from heaven and save me. He reproaches the one who would swallow me up. God shall send forth his mercy and his truth. I am poor and needy, yet the Lord thinks upon me. You are my help and my deliverer. Do not delay, O my God. Hear my cry, O God. Give heed to my prayer. From the end of the earth I call to thee when my heart is faint. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I.
My name is Lauren, and this is my brother Rob. I met Hope about 10 years ago when we were in a college program together, and she quickly became one of my closest friends, so I was soon friends with Kyle too. I had the honor of being in their wedding and watching as Kyle and Hope created a home that honored their families, but formed their own rendition of marriage, partnership, family, and the good life. Their love created refuge and freedom for others. Again and again, they invited me to come and stay with them when I needed refuge in dark days. They helped me believe for what my family could be. There are a lot of things I could say about Kyle, and I agree with so much of what has already been said. But what stands out to me most, besides his love for his family, is that he disagreed well. Kyle is a picture of integrity. He was firm in his convictions, loving people well. Plenty of people have convictions, but few also live them out in love. He was true to himself, and he loved people, and he challenged them to be better. We are better humans because of Kyle Forti.
My name is Robert Palmer, and Kyle Forti is one of the reasons I'm alive.
I'm going to share some of my story to explain how Kyle changed my life. I have a dark past, but at the darkest, days spent with Kyle were vivid and bright. From the moment I met Kyle, he showed me that life was worth living. One conversation, I was 16. His words allowed me to believe that I am loved by God. It sunk in. I'm a survivor of childhood abuse, but no one knew at that time. So love from God was news to me. Without ever saying the words, Kyle dared me to live. And to live, I had to face the fact that I wanted to die. At 19, I spoke up, and things got darker before they got brighter. But life was worth it. And now I know the light always wins. Through trauma therapy, police reports, suicidal days and nights, I needed proof to keep living. Kyle and Hope were a proof I held close to my heart. Proof of love, proof of life. Now I'm closer to love and life than I ever imagined. But I still and will always carry Kyle and Hope's proof of life with me wherever I go. 5 years ago, I would have guessed Kyle would have been at my funeral. But in those 5 years, I've paid a price, and I have learned how to live. Just as I do not and cannot believe God ordered the abuse, I do not and cannot believe God ordered Kyle's death. I have learned God writes restoration over brokenness, beauty over ashes. The author of life always has more redemption than we have pain. A day is coming, because the story isn't over, and we've heard the ending. A day is coming where all the tears will be personally wiped away by the Son of God, a man named Jesus who loves, a man who loved me when I was shattered, and that love brought life. I got home from a mission trip the same night Kyle died. The next morning, I told my favorite prof I didn't think I could pass my midterms that week. He looked at me and said, "What would Kyle say to you right now?" Immediately, I thought, get bleep done. But I go to a Bible college, and I'll just leave it at that as to why I didn't want to say it out loud. It's a little bit different than Hillsdale. But I said it to him anyway, and he said it back to me, "Well, get bleep done." I did, and I will. I will become proof for others, live a life worthy of the breath in my lungs. Freely I have received, freely I will give. Like Jesus, like Kyle.
Good evening. I'm Andrew Nowak, Hope's older brother. I first became aware of Kyle Forti 12 years ago when I discovered my sister had begun an online relationship with some guy. I'm her older brother, and I had questions. So I began to observe Kyle very closely. What I saw was Hope spending countless hours with him on the phone, them writing each other letters, and growing together in amazing ways. I took note of this as he worked his way through college and even drove from one end of California to the other to meet our whole family. As time passed, Kyle's work ethic, intense conviction, and curiosity about how the world should and could be, most of all his love for Hope, convinced me beyond a shadow of a doubt Kyle was indeed the real deal. Even better, Kyle and Hope were perfect for each other, and I didn't stop observing him. He became an example to me of how to stand for convictions, work with skill and passion, and most importantly, how to be a strong and loving husband and father. I'm gonna miss him. I miss him already. He's my friend and brother. I'll miss seeing how happy he made my sister and their children. But I can't wait to see him again when Christ makes all sad things right. And when I see Kyle in the crowd of great witnesses, I'm going to run straight to him. But I think Hope's going to beat me. Thank you.
Monsieur, I bless your name. Monsieur, lay down your burden. You raise my child in love, and you will be with God. Come with me where chains will never bind you. All your grief at last behind you. Lord in heaven, look down on him in mercy.
Forgive me all my trespasses and take me to your glory. Take my hand, I'll lead you to salvation. Take my love, for love is everlasting. And remember the truth that once was spoken. To love another person is to see the face of God.
Well, I made a mistake. That was supposed to be at the end. Kyle's dad is going to come and close us. I already couldn't stand listening to that song without crying. It's going to be much harder now.
Oh, good evening. My name is Scott Forti. I've been Kyle's dad since he was 2.5. I met my lovely bride. And then Kyle, a couple nights, maybe a week later. But before I get into all that, Hope, I need to apologize. I put the sock monster in your husband's suitcase on your wedding night. We have a sock monster at our house, too, and there's another gentleman here, Tom. There's a sock monster at his house. And I find it kind of funny that you have different socks on because some of my kids, even as of yesterday, had different color socks on. I come before you with a sad heart, just like everybody here. I screamed with a loud voice the night I heard because I wasn't at home. And I screamed loud in a parking lot. No way, God, not Kyle. So tonight you've seen, you've heard, there's pictures here, there's people live streaming, and I thank you all for being part of Kyle's life. Everybody here knows Kyle. You have different stories. I could give my own. I'm going to give a couple of little testimonies. But we all agree, Kyle loved people. I do not know of another man or woman on the face of the planet that loved people better than Kyle. Not one. And as I think about that, I go back to the time he was 14, maybe 15, and he said, "Dad, I don't understand people." I said, "Okay, what's going on?" And he said, "You know, we've got 2 commandments that Jesus gave." And he said, "Sometimes I just don't know how to love people." So I'm going to go over those commandments, and the first one is, let me back up. Christ gave those commandments in Matthew, I believe it is. And he said, there's 2 greatest commandments. Christ said, the first one is to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy mind, with all thy soul, with all thy strength. Kyle knew that one. And he also said, "Dad, that's a relationship command." I said, "Yes, it is." And I said, "Kyle, what's the second one?" And he said, "Love thy neighbor as thyself." Anything else with that, Kyle? Yeah, it's a relationship command. Kyle loved people. He did that command extremely well. Didn't matter if you were a man or a woman. Didn't matter what your age was. Didn't matter what your race was, your skin color. Didn't matter what your religion was, personal preferences. And as everybody knows, it didn't matter what political party you were with. He loved them all. There are many times in my life where I struggled with that. And I got to share with him 2 years ago, last February, he took me skiing. Okay, another skiing deal, but that's not about the ski slopes. He always knew I wanted to go to a top 100 restaurant. And in Keystone, Colorado, there is one. And that night, we briefly touched on relationships with people. And we're sitting at a very expensive plate of food. And I said, "Kyle, I got to admit, you've taught me how to love people as Christ does." The model that Jesus Christ gives in that second command, there is no don'ts. Sorry if that's the wrong word, sweetie. There is no don'ts. There's only one command: love. And he did it well. So at the end of that night, we were walking back to the chalet that he had gotten for us. And he, and I don't remember the other young man that was with us, that was sitting down there, they were watching something on TV, and they were working at the same time. And some crazy political thing was on, and they broke and watched. And I walked downstairs and I said, okay, what's going on? And they explained it. And I jokingly, this is the funniest part of the whole night. Maybe for me, it might not be for you, but it was definitely for me, I should say. And they were joking back and forth and whatever. And I said, Kyle, I need to run for political office. And everybody who knows me thinks that's a bad idea, okay? So he jokingly comes back and says, well, give me your best opening line for a speech. And so I know I have him on the line, and I just say this, okay? Now, bear with me, because here's the funny part. And it's out of a cartoon, and he picked up on it. So I said, friends, ladies, gentlemen, gentle peoples, and everything else. And he picks up on it, and he says, Dad, I can't get a cartoon character elected. And I laughed, and I said, I know, but watching you guys do this, and you're not angry at the people on the screen, shows the love of Christ. Okay? To get the truth right was incredible. And he wanted to do that, and everybody knows that. I got to find where I'm left off. Hold on. That's Kyle's greatest story because it comes from God. He loved God. He loved Jesus Christ. He knew where he was at. And he struggled with the truth of all the different other things that were out there. How did it all fit? And so I get to close. And I get to say a closing prayer. I ask his lovely wife, Hope, what should I say? What should I do? Is there anything you wanted included? And she wanted a psalm read, the whole thing. She and Kyle memorized it before they got married. If I have it right, you put it on a canvas, correct? And then in a fire right after they got married, it burnt. So we're going to read it together. But before we do that, the last thing about the evening for the dinner was this. Kyle wanted to make a toast. So this is what we're going to do. Take your best concoction. I don't know where Max is. Take your best concoction and put it in your hand, right here. Raise the glass up, and we're going to give a toast to Kyle, to the Lord God Almighty. Father God, we raise our glasses for the best drink that we can come up with to Kyle. Thank you so much, Father God, for his life, for what he did and how he loved. Cling, because that's all I can do. Okay, so to the Psalm. Psalm 34. For those of you that don't know much about the Psalms, this is a Psalm of David. And it is titled many times, Taste and See that the Lord is good. So here we go. I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. My soul makes its boast in the Lord. Let the humble hear and be glad. O magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt his name together. I sought the Lord, and he answered me, and delivered me from all my fears. Those who look at him are radiant, and their faces shall never be ashamed. This poor man cried, and the Lord heard him and saved him out of all his troubles. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him and delivers them. Verse 8, O taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who takes refuge in him. O fear the Lord, you his saints, for those who fear him have no lack. The young lions suffer and want and hunger, but those who seek the Lord lack no good thing. Come, O children, listen to me. I will teach you the fear of the Lord. What man is there who desires life and loves many days, that he may see good? Keep your tongue from evil and your lips from speaking deceit. Turn away from evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it. The eyes of the Lord are towards the righteous, and his ears towards their cry. The face of the Lord is against those who do evil, to cut off the memory of them from the earth. When the righteous cry for help, the Lord hears and delivers them out of all their troubles. The Lord is near the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers him out of all of them. He keeps all of his bones, not one of them is broken. Afflictions will slay the wicked, and those who hate the righteous will be condemned. The Lord redeems the life of his servant. None of those who take refuge in him will be condemned. I have to give a personal thanks to everybody out there. Me, my family, the Nowaks, my wife's family, we have been truly blessed by the outpouring of everybody out there. From little itty-bitty nuggets to little crumbs to gold bar nuggets for us in memories. And before I pray for us all, I just have to say, may the Lord God Almighty bless everybody here, everybody watching, because he loves us, just like he loves Kyle, and Kyle is in his midst. So if you would bow with me, we'll close, and I will pray for all of us. Father God, we bow before you because you're God. We are here to worship you and to give thanks for the life of Kyle. Some of us feel it is cut too short, but we know how well he lived. He sought the truth, and he knows it now. Thank you for the love that he gave. Thank you for the examples that he gave. Thank you for it all. I pray for hope for Max, new baby, for all the foster children. I ask that you would bless those foster children to receive the attention that they so needily want and desire, and you want to give it. So may we reach out to those children and love them as Christ does. I pray for hope as she walks through the coming weeks, months, and years, especially to give birth to a new baby, that all would go well because you love her and all. Thank you for all that have helped and are going to help, and thank you for those that will pray, that will seek you. Give them strength, give us all grace, and let us rejoice because Kyle rejoiced, Kyle lived, and Kyle loved. And I thank you so much as I close this for the wonderful example of how to love people, because Kyle did it well. And I know, as a dad, you are pleased. Thank you for your love for us. Thank you for your love for Kyle. And as we go, bless us tonight as we walk in and out the doors. I say all this in the name of Jesus Christ, who is our Savior and Lord. Amen. Thank you all for coming. I have a couple of announcements. All right. Immediately after this, please pick up your children so everybody can enjoy the reception in the back. Kyle has favorite books and hope. At both back doors, there are books. There's one for each family. At the end, after everybody's picked up one, if there's any left, please take whatever is left because they want to give out those books. There was one other thing, and now I don't even see my own handwriting. Thank you all for coming. And, the reception, thank you. I know it was there, because I wrote over it. The reception hall is down here in the back and I think it's to the left, so. Lots of drinks and lots of food. So bless you all. Thank you all for coming.